Class ninth, Political Science, Democratic Politics. Chapter number 3, Electoral Politics. Overview. In chapter 1, we have seen that in a democracy it is neither possible nor necessary for people to govern directly. The most common form of democracy in our times is for the people to govern through their representatives. In this chapter, we will look at how these representatives are elected. We begin by understanding why elections are necessary and useful in a democracy. We try to understand how electoral competition among parties serves the people. We then go on to ask what makes an election democratic. The basic idea here is to distinguish democratic elections from non-democratic elections. The rest of the chapter tries to assess elections in India in the light of the yardstick. We take a look at each stage of elections from the drawing of boundaries of different constituencies to the declaration of results. At each stage, we ask what should happen and what does happen in elections. Towards the end of the chapter, we turn to an assessment of whether elections in India are free and fair. Here we also examine the role of the Election Commission in ensuring free and fair elections. 3.1 Why elections? Assembly election in Haryana. The time is after midnight. An expectant crowd sitting for the past 5 hours in a chalk of the town is waiting for its leader to come. The organizers assure and reassure the crowd that he would be here any moment. The crowd stands up whenever a passing vehicle comes that way. It arouses hopes that he has come. The leader is Mr. Devilal, chief of the Haryana Sangharsh Samiti, who was to address a meeting in Karnal on Thursday night. The 76-year-old leader is a very busy man these days. His day starts at 8 a.m. and ends after 11 p.m. He had already addressed 9 elections meetings since morning, been constantly addressing people, meetings for the past 23 months and preparing for this election. This newspaper report is about the State Assembly election in Haryana in 1987. The state had been ruled by a Congress party led government since 1982. Chaudhry Devilal, then an opposition leader, led a movement called Nyay Yudh, a struggle for justice, and formed a new party, Lok Dal. His party joined after opposition parties to form a front against the Congress in the elections. In the election campaign, Devilal said that if his party won the elections, his government would waive the loans of farmers and small businessmen. He promised that this would be the first action of his government. The people were unhappy with the existing government. They were also attracted by Devilal's promise. So, when elections were held, they voted overwhelmingly they voted overwhelmingly in favor of Lok Dal and its allies. Lok Dal and its partners won 76 out of 90 seats in the state assembly. Lok Dal alone won 60 seats and thus had a clear majority in the assembly. The Congress could win only 5 seats. Once the election results were announced, the sitting chief minister resigned. The newly elected members of Legislative Assembly (MLAs) of Lok Dal chose Devilal as their leader. The governor invited Devilal to be the new chief minister. 3 days after the election results were declared, he became the chief minister. As soon as he became the chief minister, his government issued a government order waiving the outstanding loans of small farmers, agricultural laborers, and small businessmen. His party ruled the state for 4 years. The next elections were held in 1991, but this time his party did not win popular support. The Congress won the election and formed the government. Check your progress. Jagdeep and Navpreet read this story and drew the following conclusions. Can you say which of these are right or wrong, or the information given in the story is inadequate to call them right or wrong? Elections can lead to changes in the policy of the government. The governor invited Devilal to become the chief minister because he was impressed with his speeches. People are unhappy with every ruling party and vote against it in the next election. The party that wins the election forms the government. This election led to a lot of economic development in Haryana. The Congress chief minister need not have resigned after his party lost elections. Why do we need elections? Elections take place regularly in any democracy. There are more than 100 countries in the world in which elections take place to choose people's representatives. We also read that elections are held in many countries that are not democratic. But why do we need elections? Let us try to imagine a democracy without elections. A rule of the people is possible without any elections if all the people can sit together every day and take all the decisions. But as we have already seen in chapter 1, this is not possible in any large community, nor is it possible for everyone to have the time and knowledge to take decisions on all matters. Therefore, in most democracies, people rule through their representatives. Is there a democratic way of selecting representatives without elections? Let us think of a place where representatives are selected on the basis of age and experience, or a place where they are chosen on the basis of education or knowledge. There could be some difficulty in deciding on who is more experienced or knowledgeable. But let us say the people can resolve these difficulties. Clearly, such a place does not require elections. But can we call this place a democracy? How do we find out if the people like their representatives or not? How do we ensure that these representatives rule as per the wishes of the people? How to make sure that those who the people don't like do not remain their representatives? This requires a mechanism by which people can choose their representatives at regular intervals and change them if they wish to do so. This mechanism is called election. Therefore, elections are considered essential in our times for any representative democracy. In an election, the voters make many choices. They can choose who will make laws for them. They can choose who will form the government and take major decisions. They can choose the party whose policies will guide the government and law making. What makes an election democratic? Elections can be held in many ways. All democratic countries hold elections, but most non democratic countries also hold some kind of elections. How do we distinguish democratic elections from any other election? We have discussed this question briefly in chapter 1. We discussed many examples of countries where elections are held but they can't really be called democratic elections. Let us recall what we learnt there and start with a simple list of the minimum conditions of a democratic election. First, everyone should be able to choose. This means that everyone should have one vote and every vote should have equal value. Second, there should be something to choose from. parties and candidates should be free to contest elections and should offer some real choice to the voters. Third, the choice should be offered at regular intervals. Elections must be held regularly after every few years. Fourth, the candidate preferred by the people should get elected. Fifth, elections should be conducted in a free and fair manner where people can choose as they really wish. These might look like very simple and easy conditions, but there are many countries where these are not fulfilled. In this chapter, we will apply these conditions to the elections held in our own country to see if we can call these democratic elections.